Welcome to the CVsand main studio. We call this Studio 1, where we've managed to get a very nice Nuage desk, which is the latest door solution from Yamaha and Steinberg. We're running primarily new window. We also have in the studio 7.1 BL surround sound and a set of Mackie HR824 Mark II speakers, which is they sound quite sweet actually.
I think we just sort of moved campus, so the idea was to sort of put everything under one roof. We were looking at using other studios to send some of our third year and late second year groups to. So we sort of had the opportunity to design something that was sort of encompassed all the courses that we do. Earliest recollection I have, I think it was like 2 years ago.
November 2012.
Yeah, he comes walk into the office door one day and says, "Hey, let's design our dream studio." So I was like, awesome, okay, let's start doing that. Yeah, I think through, endless evenings of drawing and resketching the conceptual type stuff we started doing in 3D. From that point, I think when we were happy with the setup, we were happy with the fact that it had allocated space to each of our year groups, and everybody sort of had their production areas. I think from that point on it went through to the architects.
Yeah, the main idea of the studio was to create a space where every room is accessible to every studio, both through the technology, through cabling and whatever, but also through access points. So if you wanted to record in tracking room 1, you could record from studio 2 or studio 3 or wherever you were, but you could also walk around through all the different venues. We have this dream of being able to invite a symphony orchestra into the venue, and hopefully in my estimation I would like to have the symphony orchestra coming here on a yearly basis and recording in our venue as a special whatever it is during the course of their year. But so we have 4 tracking rooms, and in each of the tracking rooms we'd be able to fit in the string section, and then a percussion section at the back, and then a woodwind section in the one section, and then a brass section in the other section. So you've got the entire orchestra sitting in the venue. Logistically it's become a bit more challenging because you've got different environments and you're working with different things, but the overall idea I think is still relevant, and I think it's still applicable. We've managed to secure a whole bunch of really nice gear. Besides this actual working studio, we've got a number of really top-class microphones. In your recording, you're always limited by the ability to take things in. You know, if you've got amazing mixdown equipment, if it's tracked badly, then it's going to sound bad. Doesn't matter, what the case. If you don't have good microphones, it's not going to sound good. So we were lucky enough to actually be able to secure a number of really top-notch microphones to be able to do these projects. Stereo pairs as well, which are very valuable. The Neumann U87, which is kind of the industry standard for vocals around the world. We also managed to secure some serious preamps, Focusrite, the ISA preamps, the guys like that very much in the industry. And Audient is a British brand which got a South African designer and builder. But it's come up a lot because of the transient response and the really clear sound that you get from the Audient preamp. In Studio 2 we've got a digital mixing option where the students will learn to record through a digital medium. In Studio 3 we basically modeled the whole studio on the old analog way of recording things. We've got digital recorders in there, but you're working with an analog mixing desk, you're working with analog signal path, actual cable instead of clickety click on the mouse or something. And there's value in that. There's the academic value in that, where they actually see there's the signal. I have to turn this knob and the signal goes through that cable into that machine over there, and then they fix that machine over there and fiddle with that, and the signal comes back over here. So if someone has an idea of how that works and they can see the cables when they come in here, it's not going to be, what am I doing? It'll be, okay, I know what's going on here. All of that kind of encompasses what our idea, our whole concept of this whole environment was. So it's a multifunctional, multifaceted, and educational institution.
Because of the number of studios we've got 7 in total. So each studio can basically have a project going on simultaneously. Studio 1 can be using this tracking room 1, which is 100 square meters. Studio 2 has got, it kind of goes onto our Foley stage, which also doubles as another tracking room. So they can have another project going on there. It's the same thing with Studio 3. They've got their own ISO room. Although, that being said, you can sit in any of the control rooms and track from any of the tracking rooms, or have one huge project going on at the same time. And that sort of all kind of ties into, I think, the production sort of line that we're going with in terms of the flow of the studios. In terms of our courses, Studio 4 is set up as a post-production, as a production arranging type facility where we would have our third years composing and writing music, where we'll have all the trigger pads and outboard old school type sound modules where they're actually working with synths as opposed to just doing everything in the box.
Playing on a keyboard and twiddling with knobs.
Triggering a drum pad.
Yeah, exactly.
Came here in December and this whole entire facility was full of cars. Literally, it's like grease on the walls and you couldn't move. It was just cars everywhere. And then all they got moved out and then they started laying the bricks and we started walking around and getting a perspective of, wow, this is actually quite a big room, even though in 3D space it looked kind of small. We were wondering, oh shit, are we actually going to fit in here?
Yeah.
And when you're walking in there, it's just like, wow, this is so spacious and everything just feels right after a while.
Yeah, the funny thing is, you create a space that's big. I mean, in 3D Max, this place looked quite big, but not that big. When they put the bricks out, it looked huge.
Yeah.
And then once we put all this treatment in, and once we fit the desk in, and we're doing all the things, it's actually perfect. It's the right shape, it's the right size, it's, you know, everything's technically in the right place. So it worked out quite well. We paid a lot of attention to this room, because it being the main attraction of the sound studio, it needed to be right. The other rooms, not so much. They were more academically orientated. But we try to pay as much detail to construction principles as possible. And when I say as possible, when you're limited as much as we were with budget, then you can only do so much. So you make sure your plans incorporate all those changes. If you look at, like for example, this room, it has one parallel surface, and that's that one in the window. Essentially, you shouldn't have those kinds of things. If you look at the tracking room has got these, it almost looks corrugated. The walls are angled apart from each other. Those are all to make sure that you have a decent sound environment when someone plays an instrument. The point is not to have any specific resonant frequencies. To have a reverb is fine. You know, you just listen to the reverb. Someone claps, there's a reverb in the room. That's nice. But if you've got two flat walls, you're going to have a resonating frequency, which you clap and it goes boom, and that's what you don't want. So you kind of build that in to the actual infrastructure of the build. About a week and a half ago, everything, all the basic installation had happened, and we were starting to fix things. And it got to a point where I decided, okay, we have to create the sound panels and put them up now. And within 2 days, all the second year students had clubbed together. I got them staples and material and isotherm.
But what was great was what we used we used stuff that we had from the old building, or stuff that was handed down or people wanted to throw away, so we used what we had to create something great. I mean, when you come in here, everyone is like, wow, where do you get all this stuff? Like, we made it. It's you just created. But it was great seeing the kids coming together. But
part of it, I mean, what an awesome experience. You come into a college, and in the college you get a whole lot of experience about turning a gain knob and then pushing the fader up and then recording that sound and then mixing that sound. But when you get out into the real world, what do you have to do? You have to buy your own equipment and buy your own treatments, and then how do you make them all? What do you do? You're like, okay, we did that in college.
Yeah.
I mean, what an opportunity. Like, in my opinion, that's...
it was the wiring infrastructure for a whole studio.
Oh, yeah.
And we know how to solder.
How many points did we solder, Dave?
In S3 alone, I think there's 2,016 points. That's literally just in the one studio. The
fact that we got this is incredible.
The Nuage is probably the benchmark in controller surface interfaces. If you look at the back of it, literally, there are no, like, when you look at the average mixing desk, you've got hundreds of XLR inputs and jack inputs and blah, blah, blah. There is like a RJ45 cable that goes in, I think, and that's basically it.
And power.
Oh, and sorry, it's got a power cable.
Very important.
It's got a power cable. Yeah, so it really does set a benchmark, and I think to convince the stakeholders of this was difficult. I know it took you millions of emails, and it took months to eventually for somebody to wake up and go, oh, really? That's cutting edge? Okay, let's do that. And I think we've saved millions in terms of not going SSL or not going Midas, whatever the other options were that we were looking
Avid.
at, Avid at the time.
Avid S6.
Yeah.
No.
This really will do more for us now and for the next 10 years than any other system I believe will actually do.
Yeah.
Coupled with our preamps and stuff, I don't think there is anything close to this kind of facility interface in the country, possibly even on the entire continent. This is the first nuage in Africa, which I think is a big...
One of the main
point for us
motivating
as well.
factors for me with regards to this was longevity.
Yeah.
You can't buy something that in 4 or 5 years' time is going to be a paperweight. We've already got 1 or 2 of those.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing about this entire system is it's based on the Dante protocol, which is a multi-channel interfacing protocol that is not proprietary to Yamaha.
Yeah.
It's, you know, anyone can plug into it, anyone can use that protocol. It's a transfer protocol. So, you know, in the future, if we want to use some other preamp, or if we want to investigate something else, then we just have to find another way of tapping into the Dante protocol, as opposed to a proprietary system where you're stuck with this desk and those systems, and that's the only way it's going to work. This is very malleable, very workable, and
compatible with any kind of door.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you can flip between doors, which I think is probably...
Yeah. The other facilities that we have are very much band orientated.
Yeah.
They're very much let's record audio and that's it. You know, you're not going to record I mean, you're not going to mix a film on something that's built for compression and EQ and, you know, band related stuff, which is the other studios. And that's the first and second year predominantly, that's how those students go through.
Yeah.
Whereas this over here is kind of a merging of all those disciplines. You can even write music on here if you wanted to. You know, it's a DAW, it's a software DAW.
Okay. I'm Dave, sound recording engineering lecturer. So I lecture basically first years and second years, and I deal with taking all the theoretical principles that Neil applies in his classes, and we do the practical application in my class. And we sort of specialize in running with Pro Tools at this stage. The course is generally balanced between 50% music-orientated mixing and the other 50% being post-orientated mixing. So it's quite a nice amalgamation of both principles, and at the same time we focus on learning about all the outboard equipment as well as software-driven principles. Also lecture first year MIDI, which is using Cubase, well, in most of the Steinberg products. That's a little bit more creative in terms of musicality. Very little post stuff happens there, but in second year you're sort of going onto the principles of composing music in Cubase for you know, soundscapes from movies or something along those lines. So that's really what I do. Other than that, I make tea and coffee a lot.
I'm Suzanne. I teach music here. I basically teach my kids the building blocks of music composition, music theory, contextual study, and we just have a lot of fun. And yeah, like I said, I'm basically the building blocks to if they want to become music composers for either film scoring, just went blank, but
Writing music for bands.
writing music for bands, or jingle writing. Yeah, and then Neil would take them for third year if they want to pursue music further.
Yeah. All right, so there's an introduction. I'm Neil Leachman. I'm the HOD for City Varsity Sound Engineering. So I'm basically the slave, really. They get to do the fun stuff. And I also do a little bit of teaching, which is music. I do the third year production arrangement class, which is largely to do with writing music for... They actually have to write the music for the films here, so I guide them through that process. I help them troubleshoot. We also do 4-part harmony and arrangement, specific arrangement, writing of a pop song, how to do that. I also teach band and live. That's mostly my background. I'm qualified in music, but I spent a lot of time recording bands and mixing bands and that kind of thing in my younger days. The other part of it is Simon Ratcliffe, who's not here at the moment. He's sick in bed. He also teaches the band and live people, and then he does the post-production specialist subject in third year as well. I also teach MIDI second year, so I continue on from what Dave does, and he was exactly right in saying that, you know, you teach them to write the music. It's far more... Dave teaches a technical practice, you know, what do you click to do what, and I teach the manipulation of when you're clicking that, what can you do with the outcome. How do you create a bass synth that sounds like a dubstep bass? You know, how do you manipulate synths? How do you manipulate sound? What can you do in those projects or programs to create for yourself? And then I teach the most exciting subject, and that is audio. Theory is amazing. Students love it. Which really is about acoustics and psychoacoustics, and teaching about binary systems and a little bit of electronics. I mean, you're working from first years through to end of second year, so you're dealing with a whole different, all different levels. So you're starting with, okay, how does dynamic processing work, and then in second year, how do you apply dynamic processing? So it's more an application thing.
Streaming in third years.
I do want to touch on location sound. In the past we haven't concentrated on location sound as much as the rest of the subjects, but we've really made a point of, even the kids here today, of concentrating on location sound and bettering everyone in that, because there's a lot of job opportunities in that.
I think that's quite an important thing that we do as teachers here. We don't just teach, you know, we're constantly in the industry. We all specialize in something. Like Susie specializes in location engineering, recording. Neil specializes in...
Not very much.
Neil does a lot of live.
I'm a HOD guy. I specialize in HOD.
In hodding. No, he's a front of house engineer, so he'll be the guy at the large concerts with the mixing desk, looking good in front of the crowd. I specialize in so many different things, but in that context, I specialize in monitor engineering, where I'll be on the stage getting crapped out by the band because they need more of this and more of that. But needless to say, we are in the field all the time, regardless of what we're doing. If we're not sitting in another studio, we're doing something live, or we're working with the band, or we're doing something.
We also bring that knowledge to our students, and I tell them what to do and where to point the mic, and like, why are you doing that?
Even to further that, we're constantly moderating our academic progress. In other words, we're not trying to teach somebody, this is what the book says, this is how you have to do it, thank you very much, go away. It's a case of, this is what the book says, so what do you think happens?
And what is happening in the industry right now, and what are we doing in the industry
and what did your ear tell you that it should sound like? And, you know, it's the reality of it. It's instead of, you know, oh, it's the book. No, the book is a guide. Technology changes, and only people who live out of books try and change technology. So we try and encourage that kind of creative mentality and discipline. You know, there's value in books. I'm the guy who teaches the book subject. so
of course there's value in books.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in books, but you have to take that and then go one step further. Without that, you don't progress. There's no movement. There's no mental discipline that happens. Cool.
Cool.